Well, one of the things I think lovers of liberty need to think about deeply is, can you actually constrain this beast? Can you actually put limits on it? And does pulling it back even a little bit actually do anything in terms of sustaining that change? And those are hard questions, but I think they're important questions to ask. And you might think, for instance, what happens if we didn't have an NSA? Would somehow the world unravel? We haven't always had an NSA, by the way. So the world existed a long time pre-NSA. The NSA in its current form, I think, was formed in 1952. It went through, like all bureaus, it went through various rebrandings and merging in other bureaus before that. But, in terms of the surveillance apparatus in the United States, it's relatively young. So really during the first and then really the Second World War is when it really matures and comes into its own. And in the Cold War, it really ramps up because you needed this surveillance apparatus to protect against the communist threat, which is around every corner. Because when you're fighting an ideology, it's not a person, it's a set of ideas, which means I have to monitor everyone's ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, you and I are old enough to remember when we didn't have a Department of Homeland Security created by a Republican president.
Yep.
And I was involved in public policy at the time, and it didn't take rocket science to predict that would become a weapon that would be used against Americans. And now there's plenty of conservatives and obviously libertarians, but conservatives are like, wait, all of these agencies are now going after us. And I'm like, well, this is the dilemma that you're describing. And I talk to conservatives all the time about this because they want, and this is the main thesis of your book, can you have a classical liberal constrained government and a big defense apparatus that has aspirations to be involved in all of these wars? And your conclusion is you can't do both.
Yes. So the idea of a liberal empire, as some people refer to it, is internally inconsistent, which is the very nature of empire, the apparatus domestically, but also imperialism, which is the use of that apparatus to project force abroad and project whether it's ideology, whether it's achieving certain goals in other societies or some combination thereof, typically, is inherently illiberal. And all of the most cherished values that liberals broadly construed, I'm using liberals here in the classical sense.
Let's define liberalism, because it obviously the word can be confusing.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. So when I talk about liberalism, it's the political philosophy of individual freedom. So John Locke, of course, writing in the 1600s, is considered the father of liberalism, and there's many thinkers that have followed in his footsteps. But liberalism is a political philosophy and emphasizes the primacy of individual freedom and liberty, so the dignity of the individual, and then everything that comes out of that, the ability to associate with other people, the ability to engage in economic interactions freely with other people who also engage with you freely, the ability to move where you want to move, meaning that you don't have government-created artificial barriers to movement across geographic space. Of course, you have property rights, which influence where you can move and how you can move. But there's no one saying you are not allowed to travel over there because I tell you cannot. Or people cannot cross this line because they happen to be born over there, or they're in this category of people. So it's a very cosmopolitan tradition in terms of being open to other people and welcoming, and thinking about what institutional arrangements are conducive to those things.